Good afternoon, everybody. Today I am here with a big reading progress update because tomorrow I am going back to the library to return some books, and I figured I would review the books I'm returning before I bring them back. So there are two piles of books here. One is for the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR, and one is for the general TBR. I'm going to go through each stack one book at a time. The first book I read for the Manhattan, and some of these books are books that I read last month that I haven't mentioned in videos yet. The first book I wanted to talk about is Circe by Madeline Miller. This book will be getting a review in the February wrap-up video that Matt and I are doing in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that review. The first book on my general TBR I wanted to talk about is Days at the Taranka Cafe by Santoshi Yagasara. So this is by the same author who wrote Days at the Murasaki Bookshop and More Days at the Murasaki Bookshop. Two books which I read last year, which were very well written. They are translated from Japanese. Last year I went on a huge kick where I read a lot of translated Japanese works, and his books were two of the ones that I read. All of his books got 4 stars. This is set at a cafe in Japan, and I mean technically this could also fit into the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR because the cafe is similar to Luke's Diner, but I put it in a general TBR because the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR already has too many books in it. The second book I wanted to talk about is the first of many rereads this month, and it is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This was one of my top rated books of last year. I selected this book for the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR because the issues that the main character has with her mother remind me of Monica's relationship with her mom, Judy. Eleanor, as a character herself, is actually pretty similar to Phoebe, so this book represents 2 characters from Friends that are my top favorite characters. And currently in my reread, I am on chapter 17, page 134. The second book on my general TBR is on my backlist from 2024. This was recommended to me by Olive at A Book Olive. Most of my recommendations from her are usually nonfiction. This is the one historical fiction that she recommended to me. I appreciate all of her recommendations. They have mostly been 4 to 5 star reads for me. Currently, I am on chapter 6 in Eleanor of Avignon, page 77. I will tell you what this is about. Provence, 1347. Eleanor Blanchette is a young midwife and a herbalist with remarkable skills, but as she learned the day her mother died, the most dangerous thing a woman can do is draw attention to herself. She attends to patients in her home city of Avignon, spends time with her father and twin sister, gathers herbs in the surrounding woods, and dreams of freedom to pursue her calling without fear. In a chance encounter, Ella meets the enigmatic personal physician to the powerful Pope Clement. As his apprentice, she hones her skills as a healer, combining her knowledge of folk medicine with anatomy, astrology, and surgical techniques. These 2 pieces of earth-shattering news: the Black Death has made landfall in Europe, and the disgraced Queen Joanna is coming to Avignon to stand trial for her husband's murder. She is pregnant and in need of a midwife, a role only Ella can fill. The Queen's childbirth appears as the plague spreads like wildfire, leaving half the city dead in its wake. The people of Avignon grow desperate for a scapegoat, and a group of religious heretics launch a witch hunt that could cost Ella, intelligent, talented, unwed woman, everything. I can't wait to read more of this. As I just said, I am only on page 77. The next book I am reading for the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR is Just for the Cameras by Megan Quinn. When I did my romance video for Valentine's Day on Saturday, I talked about this book and a few other ones in that video, so I'm not going to repeat the synopsis of this book again. You can go watch the video from Saturday if you want to hear it again. As I said on Saturday, this book, I love Megan Quinn's writing style and how she develops her characters, but the problem for me with her books is that they are too long. I am on page 382, and this book is 577 pages. So I'm not even halfway done yet. Well, I am halfway done. So I think I'm probably going to finish this book by the end of the week. It's a slow process. The next book that I'm reading is Girl Dinner by Olivia Blake. This is her new release from last October. It's basically a book about vampires. So I'm really liking this so far. I just started it this morning, and I am on chapter 7, page 47. The next book I read from the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR is My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. So I read this for book club with Books and Brews at the brewery, and I have my meeting next week. So this book is going to be in a video next week after I have book club where I review this book and last month's pick, Demon Copperhead by Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingslover. So stay tuned for that video. It will be out next Thursday morning at 10. The next book I'm reading is Final Girls by Riley Sager. This is on Riley Sager's backlist. I have read most of his books except for The Last Time I Lied. That's the only book in his backlist I haven't read yet. And my reviews of his books have been pretty mixed. My favorite one probably has been The House Across the Lake, which I read in 2024. And currently in this book, I am on page 20, chapter 27, page 219. So this book is about a girl named Quincy who used to be a serial killer, I guess. I hate it when the stickers cover the description. So now Quincy is doing well, maybe even great, thanks to her Xanax prescription. She's caring. She has a caring almost fiance, a popular baking blog, a beautiful apartment, and a therapeutic presence in Coop. The police officer who saved her life. Her mind won't get to recall the events of the night. The past is the past until the first final girl is found dead in her bathtub, and the second final girl appears on Quincy's doorstep. Blowing through Quincy's life like a hurricane, Sam seems intent on making her relive the trauma of her ordeal. Just when disturbing details about Lisa's death emerge, Quincy desperately tries to unravel Sam's truth from her lies while evading both the police and bloodthirsty reporters. Quincy knows that in order to survive, she has to remember what really happened to Pine Cottage, because the only thing worse than being a final girl is being a dead one. So this book reminds me of the movie Scream and all of the... I haven't seen all of the movies yet, and... Scream 7 is supposed to come out next week. So I saw the first Scream movie for the first time in 2024. I thought it was pretty mediocre because basically it was anticlimactic because the people who are the killers, who are Billy and his other friend, I forget his other friend's name, but they were pretty much spoiled as the killers at the beginning of the movie because they were almost expelled from school, but obviously they didn't get expelled or else there wouldn't be any more movie. So I saw a spoiler for Scream 7 on Facebook that says that Gail Werthers is Ghostface. That's the character that Courtney Cox plays. I'm not really sure if I feel like watching the rest of the movies because I was so not enthralled by the first movie. We gave it 7 out of 10 stars on IMDb. When I finish this book, I think I'm going to give it 4 stars because I like the pacing and I like how tense everything is. But, I mean, the only reason why I would want to see the next Scream movie is because I want to know why Gale is Ghostface. In the spoiler, I read... Sorry if you actually want to see this movie, but the spoiler that I read on Facebook said that Gale wants to avenge something that happened to Dewey. Dewey is the cop who is Drew Barrymore's character's brother, who is played by David Arquette. So if you guys don't know, when the original Scream movie was being filmed, Courtney Cox and David Arquette were married, and they have a daughter named Coco. They got divorced in 2013. So it's very interesting that that Gale's character is Ghostface, and I only would want to see that movie because I'm curious to know why she's avenging Dewey. Dewey probably was killed in the last movie, I'm guessing, but I don't know. And I'm not really planning to see any of these other movies because I wasn't particularly scared by the first one. As I said, it was kind of underwhelming. The next book I am reading is another very long book. It's called Pack Up the Moon by Kristen Higgins. This book is going to be very sad. Well, it is very sad. So this is about a woman named Lauren who gets diagnosed with a terminal illness. And basically, the whole book is letters she writes to her husband to help her cope with her death. Sarah Caroli read this book a couple of years ago, and she gave it 4.5 stars, I think. I don't even remember her exact rating, and I don't remember which video she even reviewed it in, so hopefully she gets back to me on the comment I left her on her video the other day to direct me to the correct video that I can link in the description box. This is my first book by Kristen Higgins, and I'm really enjoying her writing style. It's just that this book is very, very sad. Currently, I am on chapter 26, page 308. The next book that I just finished reading this morning is For the Record by Emma Lord. This is about 2 feuding musicians who have to tour to save their careers. This is my second book by this author after reading Begin Again last year. I believe the person who recommended that book to me on BookTube was Rachel Catherine, who's friends with Destiny and Sarah and Haley. And I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really liked it. I really liked the dynamic that was between Mackenzie and Sam and the buildup of their enemies to lovers relationship. The next book that I am currently reading, I borrowed from my neighbor Kathleen. Like Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. It's another reread, The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. I am rereading this book because we're doing a book-to-movie comparison in April about this book and the first movie that came out in 2009. The sequel to the movie comes out on April 18th. So the reason why we're watching the first movie is because I really, really want to go to the theater to see the second one. And I haven't seen the first movie in a long time. The movie stars Anne Hathaway as Andy and Meryl Streep as Miranda Priestley. And I will save my comments on this book for when Kathleen and I do the book to movie comparison in April. In my reread, I am currently on page 203, chapter 12. The next book that I finished reading is Naked by David Sedaris. I read his other book, Me Talk Pretty One Day, last month, which I gave 4.5 stars to. That book was a short story collection. This book is his biography. David Sedaris, I am almost positive... Oh, wait, his bio is right here. David Sedaris is the author of Barrel Fever, Naked, Holidays on Ice, Me Talk Pretty One Day, Dress Your Family, and Corduroy and Denim, When You Are Engulfed in Flames, Squirrel Seeks Chipmunk, Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls, Theft by Finding, and most recently, Calypso. He's a regular contributor to The New Yorker and BBC Radio 4. He lives in England. And I found out about his book, Me Talk Pretty, one day that was on a list of books that describe Friends and Gilmore Girls characters, and it was paired up with Chandler, and I think it was matched up perfectly with that character because David Sedaris' sense of humor is very similar to Chandler's, and I feel like his daughter is a comedian on SNL, but maybe I'm wrong. Can people who watch SNL confirm that Amy Sedaris is a comedian on that show? Because I might be wrong about that. Leave me a comment. The next book that I'm reading on the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR is The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. This book apparently describes Rory Gilmore, but I'm not really sure how. This is a new book. This is a new author to me. It's an older book. Oh, here we go. This came out in 1972, and I think the movie came out in the 90s or the 80s. And this author also wrote Rosemary's Baby. I just started this book this morning, and I'm only on page 60. The next book I'm reading is a graphic novel, A Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I have heard about this book from a couple of booktubers. Kahlilah D is currently reading it, and I think Cari read it last year at some point. So this book came out in 1993, and the people who I have seen review it have been talking about how she basically prophesized what was going to happen in the current time period with everything crazy that's going on in the world. So that's what makes this book kind of difficult to read, is that in the early 90s she predicted the future. Octavia Butler died in 2006, so she is no longer with us, unfortunately. The other book that I have read by her is Kindred, which I read last year and gave 4 stars to. Currently, in this graphic novel, I am on page 178, and I should probably finish this book today or tomorrow. The next book that I just finished reading is called The Wedding Party by Jasmine Gulroy. This is my second book for this TBR by this author that I've read. The second one was her new release from last February called Flirting Lessons, which connects to Ross's whole plot in the one where Ross can't flirt, where he has trouble flirting with the pizza girl. So this book focuses on Maddie and Theo, and they are at their friend's wedding, but they kind of hook up secretly in the background during the festivities, very similar to what happens to Monica and Chandler during Ross and Emily's wedding in England in season 4. So I really loved the banter between Theo and Maddie. They are very, very similar characters and personality to Monica and Chandler. And on the surface, Maddie and Theo are two very different people. Maddie is more casual and relaxed. Theo is a bit of a control freak and very organized. Do you think this is the case of opposites attract, or are they more alike than they appear? So I answered this question in my video on Saturday, but I think I can give a better answer now that I have finished the book. And I can also compare them to Monica and Chandler, because they are basically the roles of Monica and Chandler reversed. Maddie is Chandler in this book because she has the more laid-back personality, and Theo is Monica because she's kind of a control freak. And yes, I think their relationship, much like Monica and Chandler's, is very opposites attract. But then again, like Monica and Chandler knew each other since childhood because Ross and Chandler were friends in college. I gave this book 4.5 stars, and this author is also very good. This is the third book in a series that starts with The Proposal, which was the wedding date. No. Yeah, the second book in the series, The Proposal, was a Reese's Book Club pick when Reese's Book Club first started in 2016, and this book came out like 2 or 3 years later, so I gave this 4.5 stars. The next book that I'm reading is The Busybody Book Club by Freya Sampson. This is by the same author who wrote Nosy Neighbors, and I found Nosy Neighbors on a list on Instagram for books that describe characters from Gilmore Girls, and it was paired up with Emily. And I think this makes a lot of sense for Emily's character because she's very nosy, especially in the life of her daughter and granddaughter, and she tries to manipulate things in her relationship a lot. I've really been enjoying this series that Kiara Loves TV does on her channel, where she analyzes how Emily Gilmore is so manipulative, and I haven't seen any videos from her in a really long time, so I hope she's doing okay and hope she comes out with another video soon. So this book is a mystery with the same characters from Nosy Neighbors, and I really enjoyed those characters. They were fun to follow and really well developed. Currently, I am on chapter 10, page 68. The next book that I'm reading is called That's How It Happened by Craig Thomas. I mentioned this book a little bit in my video on Saturday night. This book is about a couple named Paige and Rob. Paige gets approached by this famous celebrity named Merritt Blackshear to turn the story of the company that she runs for adults with developmental disabilities into a movie. Her son Emmett has Down syndrome. He's in his 20s. And then her daughter Darcy is still in high school. Her husband Rob is a screenwriter and wrote this really popular show in the 90s called Subway Series. So this book was written by the creator of How I Met Your Mother, which is a show that is sort of like a ripoff of Friends in a way. Miss Mojo posted a video about that recently, which I'll link in the description if you are interested in seeing how many similarities there are between plots or characters in that show, in those two shows. I started listening to the audiobook, but only got 20% into it before I had to give it back to the Cloud Library app. So I checked the physical book out of the library on Friday, and I am on chapter 21, page 251. I should finish this book tonight, and I'm going to give it 4 stars. Actually, 5 stars. So, as I was mentioning, the author of this book is one of the producers of How I Met Your Mother, and he based this book on his own experience with raising his son who has Down syndrome. And the audiobook is also really well produced and well narrated. 2 of the actors from How I Met Your Mother do the voices of the parents. Josh Radnor, who plays Ted, and Colby Smulders, who plays Robin. So I have been finding these threads on Instagram about like TV characters that might be autistic. And one character that has showed up in that post is Robin from How I Met Your Mother, who is one of the voice actors for this audiobook, Colby Smulders. So I actually don't really know if any of the How I Met Your Mother's characters are supposed to be neurodivergent. I did reach out to David Crane on Facebook over the summer. He was one of the Friends directors, and I told him, hey, listen, I did this video last month. I emailed him last August, and about for Disability Awareness Month, on whether or not Friends and Gilmore Girls characters are neurodivergent. And Phoebe is the character on Friends that I think is neurodivergent, but he says that none of the characters on Friends were supposed to be written that way. But as a person who watched that show growing up and connected with a couple of different characters on that show as a teenager, even though these characters were meant to be much older than me, I definitely connected to them, these three main characters in Friends, Monica, Chandler, and Phoebe. I was diagnosed with a disability that is similar to autism when I was 14 years old. So when I was watching Gilmore Girls, one character I noticed that I connect the most to on Gilmore Girls, watching it as an adult, is Madeline, who is Paris's friend, who's played by Shelley Cole. And so I wanted to thank David Crane for answering my question about if any of the Friends characters are neurodivergent. That was very helpful. I still think that even though they're not specifically written that way in the script, I bet if there was a series to be made about their kids, like about the kids of the Friends, like Ben and Emma and Frank Jr. and Alice's triplets, and Erica and Jack, there would be a lot of room for possibility of having any of those characters maybe have disabilities or something, even though none of their, well, to be fair, it's pretty obvious that Monica has OCD, but I think she's the only character that might have a diagnosed neurodivergent disability. The other article that I have read online about characters from Friends that have neurodivergent traits is actually a article about Ross and Monica. I will link my video about Friends and Gilmore Girls characters who might be neurodivergent in the description before I start to ramble on for too long here. The next book is called The Great Transition by Nick Fuller Goggins. This is the main humanities book club book for this month. I picked it up at the library on Friday, and Cari Can Read actually mentioned this in her January wrap-up. I don't think she has finished it yet, and I just started it this morning. It's very interesting so far. It's basically about climate change and how it's impacting our world, and I am on page 85. We're down to the final two. The last book I'm reading for the Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR is another reread. This book is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I first read this book in 2023 because Destiny and Sarah and Haley and Rachel were all talking about it at the time, and it was getting a lot of hype. This is about two characters named Sam and Sadie, who meet as kids when they're in the hospital getting cancer treatment, and they're really into video games. One computer game that's mentioned a little bit in here is a favorite computer game of mine from elementary school called The Oregon Trail. So it's obviously mentioned that you die of dysentery in that game. That's referenced a couple of times. So I loved and appreciated that throwback. So this book is about friendship and content creation, because when Sadie and Sam grow up, they become video game developers. This book, I had trouble getting into it when I first read it in 2023, and honestly, it was a DNF. But then I went back and gave it a second chance the following year, and actually ended up really liking it, so my rating went up from 3 stars to 4.5. And so this book was on a TBR list for friends characters that I found on Instagram for Ross, and I initially could not figure out why, but now I think I know. Because one of the sections of this book is called pivots. See? Like pivots as in pivoting the couch, moving up the stairs when Ross is moving into his apartment. So, in my reread of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, I am on page 251. The final book I finished reading that I'm returning to the library is The Marquis Who Mustn't by Courtney Milan. This is the second book in a trilogy about which is a romantic comedy series set in the same time period as Pride and Prejudice. So my mother-in-law recommended this series to me, and I read the first book last fall and gave it 5 stars. This book is getting the same rating. I'm really enjoying getting to know these characters, and I'm sad to see this series end in one more book, which I'm putting on my list right away of reserves. So, now that I have gone through all of the books and all of the ratings and all of my progress, I just wanted to say that this is my last video for this month that I'm doing on my channel. On the 28th, Matt and I will be doing our bi-monthly entertainment wrap-up, and there will be a little bit of reading progress in there for January and February, because we have been doing a lot of reading together, and we will be doing a book-to-movie comparison of The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. He also read a mystery by Paul Dorian that he's going to talk about, and he's also going to talk about this biography he read about Caitlin Clark, who's a WNBA player. And then we have a whole bunch of movies and TV show episodes to talk to you about for Black History Month. So that is what's in store for you in a couple of weeks on the 28th. And my next reading progress video will be out on March 8th on this channel, probably at like 10 a.m. If I'm able to get it out sooner, I will post a note for you guys in the community tab, so keep your eyes peeled to that in case I'm able to post another video sooner. But as I was mentioning at the end of Saturday night's video, I have to reel in how often I'm posting videos, because my top priority right now is writing my play script for the Port Fringe Festival in June. And that's going to take most of my focus away from content creation until the beginning of the summer when the festival is over. So instead of doing bi-weekly reading videos, I'm going to do one video at the beginning of each month that will wrap up the previous month's reads and talk about what books I'm currently reading in the current month. So, for example, the next video I'm doing that comes out on March 8th, that will wrap up whatever books that I finished reading in February, and also the books that I read in the first week of March. And that's how it's going to be for the rest of the spring and the rest of the summer. And as I have mentioned in previous videos, the videos that Matt and I are doing are ending in the summer because our vertical harvest job is starting in September and we won't have as much time to put out videos. Not to mention that once we get into the fall, a lot of the content we watch tends to get repetitive because of back to school, Halloween, and Christmas movies. So we don't really have much new stuff to review for you. So our last entertainment review video will be up sometime in August. I think on the schedule I posted on the community tab, I said August 21st. It might be out earlier depending on where we are at that time. And Kathleen and I are ending our Friends and Gilmore Girls podcast at the beginning of December. Our next podcast episode will be out on May 2nd. That will cover the quarterly reading wrap-up for December 2025 to April 2026. So we're going to have a lot to talk about. In the times when we do not post YouTube videos, you can find our reviews on our blogs that are linked in the description box of the podcast videos. So if you go back and watch our podcast episode from December, click the description box and then you'll find the links to our blogs. We keep the blogs relatively up to date, so whenever we don't have a video going up, we are also reviewing other books. Like, for example, some upcoming blog posts that we have are a author focus for Jennifer Aniston's birthday, where we're reviewing 2 books by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and After I Do. As I mentioned earlier, at the end of April, we're going to be doing a book-to-movie comparison for The Devil Wears Prada. In that same blog post, we're also going to be doing a book-to-movie comparison for West Side Story. In March, we have 2 blog posts upcoming. One is a book-to-movie to play comparison for Little Women, which will be out on March 24th. And then our series Issues in the Media series book and TV show episode review. For that TV episode, we watched season 4, episode 10 of Gilmore Girls, The Nanny and the Professor, and read Slammed by Colleen Hoover, The Academy by Elin Hildenbrand and Shelby Cunningham, and The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood. And additionally, for that TBR, on my own time, I am reading Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy, which came out on January 20th. And I reread My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. The rating for that book has not changed. It's still 2.5 stars. And then another book I'm rereading is going to be The Teacher by Frida McFadden, which I DNF'd at 50%, but I figured I might as well read it again and finish it to see if I actually like how it ends. So that is what you can look forward to. And then after that, there's going to be no more entertainment blog or podcast because we have had many discussions about our schedules being too busy, not having enough content to review, and also, as I'm sure you're aware, ever since 2023, I have dealt behind the scenes with a lot of scammers. My biggest thing that happened was in 2023 when somebody stole money from me that was pretending to be Matthew Perry. And since then, I have dealt with several people who have pretended to be not only Matthew Perry after he died, which is freaking sickening, but other characters from other actors from Friends, or sometimes even their family. Like recently, I had to block somebody who was claiming to be Jennifer Aniston's stepbrother and saying he could get me a fan pass to interview her for my blog if I gave him $500, but I had to block him because he was bugging me for money that I didn't have. So that is the reason why all of this stuff has to end, unfortunately. But it's not like this hasn't been going on for a long time. The original blog for this entertainment blog actually started in 2009 when I had a internship after college at the Milford Cabinet as a freelance writer covering local theater shows. From there, it turned into not only reviewing local theater, but also reviewing TV shows and movies, and eventually books, which is where we are today. So if you have been a longtime follower of the original blog, J9 the Theater Geek, which was on Blogger and Tumblr and WordPress, thank you for your support over the years. It has really been super appreciated. We appreciate all of you guys. Even if you don't leave us a comment, we appreciate you watching our videos and taking time to listen to us talk about books, movies, and TV. Have a great week, everybody. We will see you soon.